It's 2 o'clock in the morning. Rain is hammering the windows outside. The streets are slick and shiny like a wet mirror. And this woman, let's call her Maya, she's just wiping down sticky tables at a beat-up old diner. Tired, exhausted, feet hurting, heart hurting even more, and then a black briefcase slides across the floor, stops right at the tip of her old beat-up sneakers, just sitting there like it's waiting for her. Now listen, most people would have called the police right away. Some people would have grabbed the cash inside and ran as fast as they could, but Maya wasn't like most people. She was a desperate mom, cornered by life from every single direction. And when she opened that case, she didn't just find a fortune. She found a folder with her own name written on it, and returning it to the most dangerous man in the city. That wasn't a choice anymore, that was survival. So here's how it all started. The neon sign outside the diner was flickering. Pale pink light, kind of sick looking. Rain was pouring down like the sky had a hole in it. Inside, the air smelled like burnt coffee, wet coats, and that cheap cleaning stuff that stings your nose. Maya Higgins was wiping down the table in booth 4 for the third time. Her shoulders ached with that deep, boring kind of pain that never fully goes away. She was only 28 years old, but honestly, she felt like she was pushing 40. Being a single mom will do that to you. Her husband Daniel had died 3 years ago, a hit, and run, they said, random, they said, gone, just like that. Left her with a pile of debt, a broken heart, and a 3-year-old little boy who kept asking why Daddy wasn't coming home. Now, little Sam was 6 years old, and his asthma was acting up again. The inhalers he needed cost more money than Maya made in a whole week of overnight shifts. She pushed her dark hair out of her face and looked up at the clock. 2:15 in the morning, 3 more hours until her shift ended. 3 more hours of pouring coffee for people who couldn't sleep, truck drivers passing through, and the occasional lonely soul haunting the streets of the city at night. Then the bell above the door went off, clang, loud and sharp. The door flew open, cold wind and freezing rain blasted in, and a man stepped inside. Maya's breath caught in her throat. Something about him just felt wrong. Like the whole energy in the room shifted the second he walked in. He did not belong here. Even soaking wet, his dark gray suit looked like it cost more than Maya's entire apartment. He was tall, broad shoulders, sharp face, dark hair dripping with rain, but his eyes, oh, his eyes were the scary part. Ice blue, cold, scanning the diner like a hunter checking a field. He didn't look at the menu, didn't even glance at the pie display. He walked straight to the darkest corner booth in the back, and as he passed under the lights, Maya saw it. A dark red stain spreading across the left side of his jacket, almost black under the dim lights. Blood. "Coffee," he said. His voice was deep and low, like gravel rolling around in a tin can. "Black, leave the pot." Maya swallowed hard. "Don't get involved," her brain whispered. "Just pour the coffee. Keep your head down. Go home to Sam." She grabbed a fresh pot from the burner and walked over. Her hands were shaking a little as she flipped the mug right side up and poured. She couldn't help but notice his hands, big hands, full of old scars, and they were gripping that black briefcase like his life depended on it. "You need an ambulance?" Meyer asked. The words just came out before she could stop them. His icy eyes snapped up to hers. For 1 second, the look in them almost made her step backwards. "I need you to forget you saw me," he said quietly. His jaw was tight, like every word was costing him. He reached into his pocket with one hand and pulled out a crumpled, blood-stained $100 bill. Dropped it on the table for the coffee. Maya stared at that bill. $100. That was 3 inhalers for Sam. That was 2 weeks of groceries, but the blood on it made her stomach flip. "I don't want your money," she said quietly. She slid the bill back towards him. "I just want you to leave before whatever trouble is chasing you walks through that door." A tiny, tired smile touched the corner of his mouth. Smart girl, but before he could say anything else, screech, tires outside, hard and fast, blinding headlights lit up the frosted windows like a spotlight. The man's whole face changed in half a second, the pain gone, replaced by something cold, something deadly. He shoved himself out of the booth, grabbed the briefcase, didn't go for the front door, moved fast towards the kitchen, swing doors instead. "Get down," he barked at Maya. She didn't hesitate. She dropped behind the counter just as the front windows exploded inward. Glass everywhere, the roar of automatic gunfire filled the diner. Bullets tore through the walls, shattered the pie display, turned napkin holders into tiny flying missiles. Maya curled into a tight ball on the floor, hands over her ears. Eyes squeezed shut, praying to a god she hadn't talked to in years. "Sam, please let me get home to Sam." Then the shooting stopped, just like that, gone. She heard boots crunching on broken glass, rough voices. "Check the back." He didn't make it out the front. Maya held her breath until her lungs were on fire. She heard them kick the kitchen doors open. Then, after a moment, an angry shout from the alley outside. "He's gone," jumped the fence, move before the cops show up, tires squealing, fading away into the storm. For a long, long moment, the only sounds in the diner were the hissing of the broken coffee machine and the rain pouring in through the shattered windows. Maya slowly uncurled herself. Her legs were shaking so bad she could barely stand. The diner was absolutely destroyed. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. She knew she had to wait for the police, so she started automatically cleaning up the glass around her feet. Her hands were moving, but her brain was somewhere else entirely. She walked through the kitchen and pushed open the heavy back door. Cold night air hit her like a slap to the face. The alley was empty, dumpsters, puddles, distant street lights. And then she saw it, wedged between the brick wall and the rusty dumpster, half hidden under a soggy cardboard box. The black leather briefcase. He must have dropped it when he jumped the fence. The men shooting up the diner missed it in the dark. Maya walked toward it slowly, like it might explode. "Leave it," her brain screamed. "The police will find it. It's evidence, it's death." But standing there in the freezing rain, shivering in her cheap waitress uniform, a desperate, reckless thought crept in. That man left $100 bill for a cup of coffee. Whatever was in this case was worth killing for. The police would just lock it up in some evidence room, and she would go back to drowning in debt, watching her son fight to breathe. Before the first police car even pulled into the parking lot, Maya Higgins made the first truly reckless decision of her entire life. She picked up the briefcase, shoved it deep inside a big black trash bag, and buried it at the bottom of the laundry hamper in the employee break room. When the police questioned her, she told them everything: the man, the blood, the gunfire. She just conveniently forgot to mention the luggage he left behind. Maya's apartment was a tiny 4th-floor walk-up, the building where the heat never worked right and the pipes were always making weird noises. She tipped her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Torres, $20 from her tip money to watch Sam, waited until the old woman shuffled down the hall, and then locked her deadbolt. The apartment was quiet. The only sound was the soft, gentle wheeze of Sam, sleeping on the pull-out couch in the living room. Maya tiptoed past him, pressed a kiss to his warm forehead, and carried the trash bag into the tiny bathroom, locking the door behind her. She sat on the edge of the old bathtub, Her hands were still shaking so bad she could barely untie the bag. She pulled the briefcase out. It was a fancy, expensive model, sleek and dark and heavy. The combination locks were solid, but a bullet had grazed the side and dented one of the latches pretty badly. Maya went to her kitchen drawer, came back with a heavy flathead screwdriver and a hammer. She jammed the screwdriver under the bent latch, slammed the hammer once, twice. On the third hit, the metal snapped. She did the same to the other side. Then, taking a deep breath, she opened it. She stared. Her brain just couldn't process what she was seeing. For a full 10 seconds, she just froze. The left side of the case was packed with money. Neat, tight stacks of $50 and $100 bills. Maya had never seen so much cash in her entire life. At least $250,000, maybe more. Her heart was slamming in her chest. This wasn't just a lifeline. This was a completely different universe. But it was the right side of the case that made the blood drain from her face. Strapped under a leather net was a thick black hard drive. Heavy, duty, military looking, and beneath it lay a thick yellow envelope, sealed with dark red wax. The wax had been pressed into the shape of a wolf's head. Maya slowly reached out and picked up the envelope. She broke the seal, tipped the contents onto the closed toilet lid. Photographs spilled out, and Maya gasped. Dropped the envelope like it burned her. They were photos of her, dozens of them. Maya walking out of the diner. Maya dropping Sam off at school. A photo taken through her living room window. Her reading a bedtime story to her son. The dates stamped in the corners, spread across the last 3 years. "Oh my God," Maya whispered. Her hands flew to her mouth. She'd been watched, hunted, but why? She pushed the photos aside with a shaking finger and found a thick stack of legal papers. The header at the top read, "Deed of Trust, the Higgins Estate." Maya frowned. Panic briefly gave way to total confusion. Higgins Estate. Daniel had left her almost nothing. A life insurance payout that barely covered his funeral. An old Honda with a dying engine, credit card debt up to her eyeballs. Daniel was a mid-level accountant at a shipping company. There was no estate. She started reading, and the bathroom walls started closing in, according to these documents. A company called Apex Holdings owned 6 commercial buildings downtown, a luxury high-rise in the Gold Coast neighborhood, and the entire city block where Maya's diner stood, the combined value easily $50 million. And the sole owner of Apex Holdings was Daniel Higgins. Attached to the back of the deed was a coroner's report. Maya recognized it immediately. It was Daniel's, but this one was different from the one she'd been given. The official report said he died from massive injuries consistent with a hit and run. This one described rope marks, burns, and a single gunshot wound to the back of the head. Daniel wasn't run over. Daniel was tortured and then executed. Tucked behind the coroner's report was a handwritten note on heavy paper. The handwriting was sharp and aggressive. The ink was black. It read, "Daniel Higgins skimmed $20 million from the Russo family accounts to buy this land under our noses. The Russos killed him for the theft, but they still don't have the deeds. They don't know. The wife is the sole inheritor. Find Maya Higgins, secure her signature to transfer the land to the Vitelli family to settle her husband's debt. Then relocate her and the boy before Arthur Russo realizes she is the key to his missing empire. L.V." Maya sat on the edge of the bathtub, the world tilting like a ship about to capsize. Her boring, predictable husband wasn't an accountant. He was a mob money launderer. He had stolen from the Russo crime family, the most vicious gang in the city, to secretly build an empire for her and Sam. And for 3 years she had been sitting on a fortune, completely clueless, while the monsters who murdered her husband hunted for the paperwork that was now sitting right on her lap. The man in the diner, the man with the ice blue eyes, L.V. Lorenzo Vitelli, head of the rival Vitelli crime family. The only man in the city who everyone, even the Russos, was afraid of. Lorenzo had the deeds. Lorenzo had been watching her to make sure the Russos didn't get to her first. Maya stared at all that cash. She could pack a bag, wake Sam up, grab the money and run, disappear into some small town in the middle of the country. Start over, but then a cold, hard reality settled over her like ice water. You do not outrun the city's mob with $250,000 and stolen paperwork. The Russos would find her. Lorenzo would find her. The men who shot up the diner were Russo's people, tipped off that Lorenzo was moving the documents. If they knew Lorenzo had the briefcase, it was only a matter of time before they traced it back to the waitress at the diner. Maya looked at the photograph of Sam playing in the park, taken from a distance, like something a hunter would take before they moved in. A fierce, white, hot mother's rage lit up inside her chest, burning away every last shred of fear. For 3 years she had cried herself to sleep. For 3 years she had begged managers for extra shifts. For 3 years she had been a victim of a lie. She was done being a victim. Daniel had left her a fortune, but he had also left her a death sentence. And the only way out wasn't to run. The only way out was through. She had the one thing both gangs desperately wanted. She had leverage. Maya gathered everything, the papers, the drive, the photos, back into the envelope. She locked the briefcase, shoved it back in the trash bag, walked out to the living room, checked on Sam, and then sat in her dark kitchen, watching the sun slowly start to rise over the city. She wasn't going to hide from Lorenzo Vitelli. She was going to deliver his lost property straight to his front door, and then she was going to make a deal with the devil. The headquarters of Vitelli Holdings didn't look like a mob operation. It was a 70-story tower of glass and steel poking up into the city skyline, projecting this whole untouchable, super corporate vibe. At 9 in the morning, Maya walked through the revolving doors into a lobby of imported Italian marble. She felt painfully out of place. She had dropped Sam off at school, kissed him hard, and then put on her one decent outfit, a black skirt from a thrift store, a white blouse, and a beige trench coat. She was carrying the heavy black briefcase. A security guard at the front desk looked her up and down, clocked her cheap shoes, clocked the banged-up briefcase. "Can I help you, miss? Deliveries go around the back." "I don't have a delivery," Maya said, keeping her voice steady even though her heart was going absolutely crazy. "I'm here to see Lorenzo Vitelli." The guard's face didn't move, but his eyes got harder. "Mr. Vitelli doesn't take walk-in meetings. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Maya leaned forward, putting her hand on the marble counter. "Call his office. Tell him the waitress from the diner is here. Tell him I found what he dropped in the alley last night. And tell him I know exactly what Daniel Higgins left me." The guard stared at her for a long moment. Then he picked up the phone, murmured quietly into it, eyes never leaving Maya's face. He hung up. "Wait here." Less than 2 minutes later, the elevator doors opened. 2 enormous men stepped out, suits barely containing their shoulders, moving through the crowd of office workers like they weren't even there. They flanked Maya on both sides. "Miss Higgins, Mr. Vitelli will see you now." Maya said nothing. She gripped the briefcase and let them take her to a private elevator. One of the men pressed his thumb to a scanner. The doors closed, and the elevator shot upward without a single sound. 40, 50, 60, 70, penthouse, the doors opened to a massive office that looked out over the entire city. Dark mahogany bookshelves lined the walls, thick cream, colored rug on the floor, and behind a huge, beautiful desk made of old wood was Lorenzo Vitelli. In daylight, he was even more intense than he was in the diner, fresh dark navy suit. But his left arm was in a black silk sling, face pale, eyes tired, but still those ice, blue eyes, sharp and cutting and totally alert. He waved the guards away with one small flick of his chin. The heavy oak doors clicked shut, just Maya and the head of the city's most powerful crime family, alone, total silence for a moment. Then Lorenzo spoke. "I have to admit, Maya," he said, his deep voice filling the room. "When my men told me they couldn't find the case in the alley, I figured either Russo's crew grabbed it, or some terrified civilian found the cash and was already halfway across the country. Walking through my front door, that was not on my list of possibilities. I read the files, Mr. Vitelli," Maya said, not breaking eye contact. She walked forward and put the battered briefcase on his perfect, spotless desk. "The locks are broken. I had to know why my diner got shot to pieces." He moved slowly from behind the desk, stepped closer to her, a full foot taller, quiet, dangerous. "You shouldn't have opened it," he said. "You shouldn't have come here. Not knowing was your only protection. My not knowing is why my husband is dead," Maya snapped. The anger broke through the fear like a wave. "My not knowing is why my son and I have been living in poverty while sitting on an empire Daniel built. You've been watching us for 3 years. You knew what he did. You knew the Russos killed him. Why didn't you tell me?" Lorenzo's eyes narrowed. He studied her. He wasn't looking at a scared waitress anymore. He was looking at a mother with nothing left to lose, baring her teeth. "Daniel came to me 3.5 years ago. Lorenzo said quietly he was in serious trouble. He had skimmed millions from Arthur Russo to buy that land, thinking he could build a real, clean future for you. But Russo's accountants caught on. Daniel knew he was a dead man." Lorenzo reached out with his good hand, touching the damaged leather of the briefcase. "He begged me to protect you and Sam. I told him I would, but only if he signed the property deeds over to my family. That land controls the entire South Side development project. Billions in the long run," Daniel agreed. "He brought me the encryption keys to Russo's accounts as a sign of good faith. That's what's on the hard drive in the case. But he never signed the deeds," Maya realized. "Russo's men found him before we could finish the exchange," Lorenzo confirmed. His voice was flat, empty of feeling. "They tortured him for a week, trying to find the money and the land. And your husband never broke. He never told them he put everything in your name. He died to keep you off their radar." Maya felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. Daniel had been a criminal, a fool, but in the end, he had died to protect her. "And you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You let us live in that tiny freezing apartment for 3 years. I couldn't make contact." Lorenzo said, stepping even closer, "If my people reached out to you, Russo would have known you mattered. I had my best people watching you, keeping you safe, until my inside sources finally found where Daniel hid the physical deeds. I secured them yesterday. I was bringing them here when Russo's hit squad ambushed me." He looked down at her. "You have the deeds, but you also have Arthur Russo's entire financial network on that drive. If Russo finds out you have it, he won't just kill you, Maya. He will take his time with you, and he will make sure your son watches." Maya's breath hitched. Her hands curled into fists. "So what happens now?" she asked. "I sign the papers, give you the land, take the cash in the briefcase, and disappear?" Lorenzo let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "You think $250,000 is enough to disappear from Arthur Russo? Maya, You own half this city on paper. You have the keys to his kingdom. He will hunt you to the ends of the earth. Signing those papers doesn't erase the target on your back. It just moves it. Maya stared at him, the trap closing in from every direction. Then what? What am I supposed to do? Lorenzo stepped back, leaned against the edge of his desk, looked at her with that calculating, intense gaze. But something was different about his expression now. He wasn't looking at an asset. He was evaluating a partner. There is a loophole, Lorenzo said slowly. A loophole in the old mob laws. A way to make you completely untouchable to the Russo family. A way that lets me legally absorb the Higgins estate without Arthur being able to lay a single finger on you or Sam. Without triggering a full war with the 5 families. What loophole? Maya whispered. Lorenzo Vitelli pushed himself off the desk. You marry me. The silence in that penthouse office was so complete. Maya could actually hear her own blood rushing through her ears. She stared at Lorenzo Vitelli, looking for the joke. There was no joke, marry you, Maya repeated. The words tasted like chalk. A short, shocked laugh burst out of her. You want me to marry a mob boss so I don't get murdered by a different mob boss. Are you out of your mind? Lorenzo didn't blink. He walked over to a side table, poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey with his good hand, and offered the glass to Maya. She shook her head. He downed it himself. This is about mob law, Lorenzo said, his voice completely businesslike. Like he was describing a contract at a board meeting. Arthur Russo answers to the commission, the 5 families that run things in this city and beyond. Under their rules, a Don's wife is off limits. To touch my wife or her children without a formal vote from the commission is an act of treason. It would bring every other family down on Arthur's head. Arthur is a monster, but he is not suicidal. Maya gripped the back of a leather chair to keep her knees from giving out. And if I just walk away, you won't make it to the highway, Lorenzo said flatly. Arthur's men are probably already tearing through your apartment right now. They know Daniel's wife is out there. Once they connect you to the diner shooting, you're done. But as my wife, you step under the heaviest umbrella of protection in this entire city. You and your son get to live. In exchange, the Higgins properties are legally absorbed into my business. A business deal. Maya said, her voice shaky but her brain running 100 miles an hour. The most important one either of us will ever make, Lorenzo agreed. Maya looked out the floor to ceiling windows. Down there in the sprawl of the city was Sam, her sweet little boy who loved dinosaurs and struggled to breathe when the pollen was too high. He was the only thing that mattered. If she had to tie herself to a monster to keep the wolves away from her son, she would do it. Without hesitation, I have conditions, Maya said, her chin lifted, eye contact firm. A flicker of something surprise, maybe even respect, crossed Lorenzo's face. Name them. First, my son. Sam has severe asthma. I need the best doctors in the state. I need him somewhere safe, away from the city air and away from bullets. Done. Lorenzo said smoothly, I have an estate outside the city, medical wing, clean air, clean environment. Second, Maya continued, stepping closer to his desk. Her fear had transformed into something cold and protective and steel, hard. This marriage is on paper only. We are business partners. You don't touch me. You don't dictate how I raise my child. And if I ever find out that you or your people put Sam in danger, I will take that encrypted hard drive with all of Russo's financial secrets. And I will deliver it to the FBI myself. Lorenzo's jaw went tight. He wasn't used to being threatened. especially not in his own penthouse, especially not by a woman in thrift store shoes. But slowly he nodded. You have my word, Maya. On the graves of my ancestors, you and the boy will be treated with total respect. You will be the lady of the Vitelli family. He reached for the phone on his desk. But we have to move now. We have less than an hour before Russo figures out those deeds aren't floating around loose anymore. I need to get Sam from school. Maya said, panic suddenly spiking again. You are not going anywhere near that school. Lorenzo said, his voice not leaving room for argument. He was already dialing Marcus armored convoy at the loading dock. Send the extraction team to Lincoln Elementary. We are picking up a 6-year-old named Sam Higgins, code red. Bring him directly to the compound. Maya lunged forward, grabbing his wrist. He doesn't know you. He will be terrified if strange men in suits grab him. My men are professionals. Lorenzo said, gently but firmly pulling his wrist free. If you go to that school, you bring the crosshairs with you. If Russo's people are watching the school and they see you, they will shoot you both in the parking lot. You have to trust me. Trust a mob boss. What a world. But when Maya looked into Lorenzo's eyes, she didn't see deception. She saw a man calculating survival odds. She gave him Sam's teacher's name, the emergency pickup password. 30 minutes later, Maya was in the back of a bulletproof luxury car, speeding north out of the city. 2 SUVs full of armed men flanking her on both sides. She was leaving her entire life behind, the debt, the grinding shifts, the tiny freezing apartment. She was marrying the mob. The Vitelli compound outside the city was less of a house and more of a fortress in disguise. Massive iron gates swung open to reveal acres of perfect green lawn, old oak trees, and a sprawling stone mansion sitting right on the lake. Men in dark suits with earpieces patrolled the grounds with big, serious dogs. Maya stood in the grand front hall, surrounded by old paintings and crystal chandeliers. Feeling completely numb, then the front doors opened. A tall man with a thick beard walked in, holding the hand of a very small, very confused boy with a Batman backpack. Mommy! Sam dropped the man's hand and ran across the marble floor. Maya dropped to her knees and caught him, buried her face in his neck, breathed in his bubblegum shampoo, and finally, let the tears come. I'm here, baby. Mommy's here. The big men said you won the lottery and we're moving to a castle, Sam said, eyes huge as he looked at the soaring ceilings. Are we rich now? Maya let out a watery laugh. Something like that, sweetie. We're safe now. Lorenzo stepped into the entrance hall. The whole room went quiet just from his presence. He looked at Sam, and for just a second, this hardened mob boss looked completely unsure of himself. He crouched down slowly to Sam's eye level. You must be Sam. His deep voice went softer. I'm Lorenzo. This is my house. I heard you like dinosaurs. Sam looked at him carefully, clutching Maya tighter. There's a museum downtown, Lorenzo continued. When the weather clears up, I'll have them open it just for you. After hours, you can look at the T-Rex all night if you want. Sam's eyes went wide. Really, I never break a promise, Lorenzo said. His eyes flicked up to meet Maya's over Sam's head. Before Maya could respond, a sharp throat clearing echoed down the hallway. A man stepped forward, late 50s. Lean, silver hair slicked back tight, eyes like 2 pieces of black polished glass. This was Illy Mercer, Lorenzo's right-hand man, the architect of the entire Vitelli family operation. Lorenzo, Illy said, his voice clipped, looking at Maya and Sam with open disapproval. The magistrate is waiting in the study. We need to finalize the paperwork before word gets out. Sam was taken to the kitchen by a guard. The chef was apparently ready to make whatever he wanted. Maya watched her son disappear around the corner. then squared her shoulders and followed Lorenzo and Illy into a dark, wood-paneled study. A terrified-looking city official was waiting with a stack of documents. Within 15 minutes, Maya Higgins signed her name on the dotted line. No white dress, no flowers, no vows, just the scratch of a pen and the heavy thud of a notary stamp. She was legally Maya Vitelli. She handed over the deeds to the South Side Properties, securing Lorenzo's empire. "It's done," Lorenzo said, dismissing the official. He turned to Illy. "Send word to the 5 families. Maya is my wife. The Higgins estate is Vitelli property. Any move against her is an act of war." Illy didn't look happy. He stared at Maya with open hostility. "You're playing a dangerous game, Enzo. She's a civilian, a waitress. Her husband was a thief. You're bringing a liability into our home. If Arthur Russo finds out we have the hard drive..." "He won't," Lorenzo snapped, absolute, final, because no one outside this room knows about it. "The drive goes into the underground vault." Illy's eyes flicked to Maya with a sneer. "Let's hope her silence is as good as her husband's." Then he turned on his heel and walked out. Maya spent the next 3 days in a kind of surreal, high-stress luxury. She and Sam got a whole private wing of the mansion, a world-class doctor came to check on Sam, adjusting his medications, giving him the kind of care Maya had only dreamed about. But it was a golden cage. She couldn't leave the estate. Lorenzo was almost never around, always in meetings, always dealing with the fallout from their sudden marriage. On the 4th night, Maya couldn't sleep. The mansion was too quiet after years of city noise and sirens. She slipped out of her room in her silk robe and headed down to the kitchen for a glass of warm milk. As she padded barefoot down the dark hallway past the East Wing offices, she heard a voice, muffled, coming from behind a heavy oak door left slightly open. It was Illy Mercer. Maya froze, pressed her back against the wall. "I told you, Arthur." She signed the papers. Illy was saying, his voice hushed and urgent. Lorenzo legally absorbed the territory. "Your men failed at the diner, and now you can't touch her without bringing the commission down on your head." Maya stopped breathing. Her blood went ice cold. Illy was talking to Arthur Russo. Lorenzo's right-hand man was a traitor. "I know," Illy continued, pacing behind the door. "But Lorenzo doesn't know you have men inside the police department." A pause. "Yes, the hard drive is here at the compound, but I can't get into the vault." Lorenzo changed the biometric codes after the ambush. Another pause. "You want the drive back. You have to draw Lorenzo out. Hit the shipments at the docks tomorrow night. When Lorenzo leaves to handle it, I'll bypass the compound security and let your strike team in through the service tunnels. They grab the woman and the boy. You get your leverage. You force Lorenzo to open the vault, and I take over the Vitelli family after Lorenzo is dead." Maya clapped her hand over her mouth. Illy was the one who had leaked Lorenzo's location to get him ambushed at the diner. And now Illy was planning to hand Maya and Sam over to the very monster Daniel had died trying to protect them from. Footsteps approached the door. Maya turned and ran silently down the carpeted hallway, heart hammering. She made it back to her room, locked the door, rushed to Sam's bed, and watched his little chest rise and fall. Rise and fall. She was trapped. If she told Lorenzo what she heard, why would he believe her? She'd been here less than a week. Illy had been at his side for 20 years. Lorenzo would think she was paranoid, or worse. Illy would find out she'd been listening and silence her before she could speak. Maya walked to the vanity mirror and looked at her reflection. The terrified waitress from the diner was gone. In her place was a mother who had finally realized something very important. In this world, in the world of mobs and power and guns, you cannot wait for someone else to save you. You have to become dangerous yourself. She didn't need to convince Lorenzo with words. She needed to set a trap of her own. And she had exactly 24 hours to figure out how to outsmart the deadliest men in the city. Morning broke over the estate. Pale gold light on frost-covered grass, but inside Maya's chest, cold dread had moved in and made itself at home. She sat at the massive kitchen island, slicing a banana into Sam's oatmeal, moving automatically, her brain running through impossible scenarios. She couldn't openly accuse Illy Mercer. In mob hierarchy, the right-hand man's word was like law. A brand new civilian wife pointing fingers at a 20-year veteran of the family. She'd be laughed out of the room, or worse, she needed proof, hard, undeniable proof. She needed to catch the Viper mid-strike. After breakfast, Maya requested a meeting with the estate's head of security, a broad, tech-savvy man named Hayes. She found him in the surveillance hub, a dark room glowing with dozens of monitors covering every angle of the compound. "Hayes," Maya said, stepping in with a warm, calm smile. "Sam's been having nightmares in this big house. I ordered a baby monitor online so I can check on him from my phone when I'm in the other wing. Could you whitelist it on the compound's Wi-Fi?" Hayes relaxed. A mother's worry, something he understood. "Of course, Mrs. Vitelli. Just give me the MAC address from the bottom of the camera." Maya handed him the slip of paper. What Hayes didn't know was that Maya had ordered 2 cameras, both synced to the same network address. The first one genuinely above Sam's bed. The second one was in Maya's coat pocket. At 3 in the afternoon, during the staff shift change when the hallways were at their most empty, Maya slipped down into the basement levels. The air down there was cold, smelled like old stone and electricity. She navigated the winding corridors until she found the heavy steel vault doors, right next to the service tunnel entrance Illy had mentioned on the phone. Hands trembling, Maya used mounting tape to stick the tiny second camera lens inside the grating of an overhead air vent. Angled directly at the tunnel keypad and the vault door, she tested the feed on her phone, crystal clear. Night vision mode, perfect view of the door. The trap was set. Now she needed the bait. At 9:45 that night, the calm of the compound was shattered. Lorenzo burst through the library doors, flanked by 3 armed guards, already pulling a bulletproof vest on over his dress shirt. Face tight, eyes burning, lock down the residential wing. He barked. He turned to Maya. "Russo just hit our primary shipping containers at the South Docks. It's bad. I have to go." Maya's heart slammed. The distraction Illy had promised Russo, playing out exactly on schedule. "Lorenzo, wait," Maya said, stepping into his path. The guards tensed. "Daisy, I don't have time." She grabbed his lapels, pulled him down so she could whisper right in his ear. "It's a trap. They want you out of the house." Lorenzo went completely still. His eyes found hers, searching. Calculating. "What do you know?" "I know Illy Mercer is going to open the service tunnel doors at midnight to let Russo's hit team in," she whispered. "He's been working for Russo the whole time. He's selling you out for your chair. And he's selling me and Sam to Russo for the hard drive." Silence. Heavy and suffocating. Lorenzo's face darkened into something terrifying, a storm of rage and betrayal. But he didn't shout, didn't call for Illy. "If you are lying to me, Maya," Lorenzo said very quietly, "the consequences will be severe." "I'm not lying," Maya said. She pulled out her phone, opened the baby monitor app, showed him the live night vision feed of the basement tunnel door. "Take your convoy, drive out the front gate so Illy's contacts see you leave, but loop back through the forest road, come in through the wine cellar entrance, watch this screen at midnight. You'll see the truth yourself." Lorenzo stared at the small screen. then looked back at the woman he had married 4 days ago. He gave one short, firm nod. Take Sam, get to the panic room behind my office. Do not come out until I open the door, 11:45 p.m. Maya sat on the floor of the steelry, in forced panic room, Sam sleeping in her arms. The only light was the soft glow of her phone screen resting on her knee. Camera feed showed an empty basement corridor. She watched the clock, 11:52, 11:58. Doubt started creeping in. What if Illy had changed the plan? What if Lorenzo got ambushed on the forest road? Then, at exactly 11:59 p.m., a shadow moved across the screen. Illy Mercer stepped into frame, a suppressed handgun hanging at his side. Maya held her breath as she watched him walk to the biometric scanner. He didn't use his own thumbprint. He pulled a cloned keycard from his breast pocket and swiped the emergency override slot. The heavy steel deadbolts unlocked with a deep, echoing clank. Illy pushed the door open, and out of the darkness of the service tunnel, 6 men in all, black tactical gear, stepped into the light. Short barrel automatic rifles, matte black helmets. Leading them was a huge man Maya recognized from documents Daniel had hidden. Dominic, Russo's chief enforcer, called the butcher, for reasons nobody talked about. Lorenzo is gone, Illy whispered, pointing toward the stairwell. The hard drive is in the vault, but you'll need to blast it. The woman and the boy are in the east wing. Take them alive. Russo wants them breathing. Good work, Illy. Dominic grunted, pulling back the charging handle of his rifle. The boss sends his regards. Before Dominic could take a single step toward the stairs, the lights died. The whole basement went pitch black. On Maya's phone, the camera switched automatically to infrared. And what erupted was pure, synchronized chaos. From the shadows of the wine cellar, Lorenzo Vitelli and 10 of his best men materialized like ghosts. No warnings, no demands to surrender. The basement became a Stroh blitz storm. Suppressed gunfire whispered through the tight corridor. Russo's men, caught completely off guard in the doorway, dropped before they could even raise their weapons. Dominic managed to get off a wild burst of fire into the dark before 2 shots from Lorenzo's own gun took him down. In less than 10 seconds, the strike team was gone. Illy, realizing everything had fallen apart, scrambled backward. Eyes wide, terrified, he raised his handgun, firing blindly into the smoke. Emergency backup lighting flickered on. Harsh red glow. Lorenzo stepped out of the shadows, face spattered with blood, eyes burning like something ancient and terrible. He didn't raise his weapon. He just walked, slow and steady, toward the man who had been at his side since his father's funeral. Enzo, wait, Illy screamed, dropping the gun, pressing himself against the cold stone wall. It was a setup. Russo threatened my family. He threatened my son Pomo. Lorenzo stopped 2 feet away. You broke the oath, Illy, he said, his voice completely cold. You brought wolves into my home, and you threatened my wife. She's a waitress. Illy spat, fear giving way to venom. She's nobody. She doesn't belong here. She is a Vitelli. Lorenzo said, final, absolute. He raised his weapon and pulled the trigger. Up in the panic room, Maya squeezed her eyes shut, pulled Sam tighter against her chest. As the muffled crack echoed through the floorboards, it was over. The Viper was dead. 20 minutes later, the panic room door clicked open. Lorenzo stood in the doorway, no Kevlar vest, face washed clean, though his knuckles were still bruised and raw. He looked at Meyer on the floor, holding her sleeping son. The hardened mob boss dropped to one knee, brought himself down to her level. He reached out, his big, scarred hand gently brushing a tear from Maya's cheek. It's clear, he said softly. The house is secure. Russo's team is gone. And with the evidence on that hard drive, I have enough leverage to have the commission strip Arthur of his seat by morning. He will never touch you again." Meyer exhaled. Long and shaky, leaning slightly into the warmth of his hand, and illy handled, Lorenzo said, his jaw tightening briefly. Then, softening as he looked at her, "You saved my life tonight, Maya. You saved my family. I thought I was buying a piece of land and taking on a problem. I didn't know I was marrying a queen." Maya looked at the man who had terrified her just 1 week ago. The fear was completely gone. In its place was something harder and more complicated. A deep, real respect. Two survivors, finding each other in the dark, bound together by blood, secrets, and a briefcase full of ghosts. "I told you," Maya whispered, a real smile finally touching her lips. "I'm not a victim anymore. We are business partners." Lorenzo's lips curved into a rare, genuine smile as he scooped Sam up into his arms to carry him back to bed. "We are, Maya. But I have a feeling this business is going to get very, very personal. So here's the thing about Maya Higgins. She started that week wiping sticky tables for minimum wage, desperately trying to keep her sick son breathing in a world that had completely forgotten about them. By the end of that same week, she had navigated a deadly war between the most ruthless crime families in the city. She had outsmarted a traitor who had 20 years of experience. She had secured a multi-billion-dollar empire for herself and her son. She didn't just survive the mob, she learned their game, and she played it better than any of them. She turned her vulnerability, a desperate, broke, grieving mother, into the sharpest weapon in the room. Her marriage to Lorenzo Vitelli, born out of pure desperation and cold math, forged something neither of them expected. A partnership built on real respect and shared survival. Because here's the truth they both figured out in that brutal, crazy, impossible week. A mother protecting her child is far more dangerous than any mob boss with a gun